Hey guys, Alec Weinstein here. I have a fun video for you today. We're going to compare two lenses, the Canon 70-200 LIS against the Rokinon 85mm prime. How does this make sense, comparing a zoom lens to a prime lens? Well, here's how. When you enable a crop factor on Magic Lantern, this now becomes an 85mm and a 255mm. What interests me about this test is the idea I could have a super fast long lens, a 255 f1.4. Let's see how it holds up against a real telephoto lens. So here we are on the Canon at 85mm f2.8. And here we are on the Rokinon, 85mm f2.8. So let's see them side by side with a 300% zoom. Let's match the exposure by pulling down the shadows slightly on the Rokinon. To me, it's pretty clear the Canon is outperforming the Rokinon in terms of contrast and sharpness. And now here's the Canon at 200mm f2.8. And now here's the Rokinon at 255 effective millimeters f2.8. Now let's pull down the shadows and midtones a bit to get the exposure matching a bit better. Now when we see them side by side, I'm surprised to notice that the Rokinon seems to be quite a bit sharper, and it seems to have better detail and contrast. I am seeing what looks to be a little color separation happening in these letters here. A little magenta on the A, a little of the green cyan on the S over here. An interesting point to note here is that if you look at the rock behind this little placard, you'll notice that it's more in focus on the Rokinon and more blurred on the Canon. The depth of field of the Rokinon is also magnified by 3 times. So here we are with the Rokinon back at f2.8 in crop mode. Let's see what it looks like at f1.4. Obviously this is a bit too much light for this scene, so let's tone it down by pulling down the shadows and midtones. And immediately what I notice is the chromatic activity in the lettering on that placard. Once we open it up to an f1.4, in a bright lit day like this with high contrast areas, it looks like the Rokinon is going to exhibit some color separation. So now let's move on to low light testing. So here we are on the Canon lens at 70mm f2.8. We have our ISO pumped up to 2500 here. Now here we are on the Rokinon at 85mm f2.8. And here we are on the Rokinon at f1.4. Now here's the Canon lens at 200mm f2.8. Now here's the Rokinon at 255mm at f1.4. There's quite a bit more noise in the Rokinon, so let's go ahead and denoise these images. Overall, I would say the Rokinon's image is preferable. We are seeing a little blue color fringing coming off the corner of that car, so again we're seeing a little color separation in the image on the Rokinon. Here we are on the Canon at 200mm f2.8. One of the things I love about the Canon lens is the lens flares that this lens creates. Now here's the Rokinon at 255mm f2.8. And the Rokinon's got some nice lens flares as well. Now here we are at f1.4 at 255mm on the Rokinon. Now let's see all 3 of those side by side. Now obviously there's a lot more noise when we move into crop mode, and I think this comparison really shows that clearly. There's a benefit to having a large sensor, and low noise is one of those. So when we move to the cropped sensor, we can expect more noise, and that's exactly what we see here. Now let's go ahead and denoise these clips. And now let's see the denoised all side by side and see what we got. I'm seeing some noise still in the 1.4 around the traffic light. The red seems to really set that noise off, and you can see it here in this still frame. But overall, all the images I consider usable, especially if I were to put in a little more work with them. So here's my results. I graded each lens in terms of sharpness, contrast, color, light, depth of field, and noise in a well-lit environment and in a low-light environment. And the results were pretty surprising. It's pretty darn close to a tie. So now, not only can I use a prime lens as a telephoto lens, But I now have a telephoto lens with unheard of abilities to gather light. I now have, in this example, a 255mm f1.4. Now sure, it doesn't have the depth of field of an f1.4 on a full frame sensor, but you know what? It has the range and the light gathering ability. It seems pretty extraordinary. Thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.